Good day, everyone. Welcome to this learning session from Training Location, your authorized DiSC distributor for Wiley Publishing, as well as a channel partner with the Ken Blanchard Companies. My name is Bill Harshman, and I'll be your presenter today for this short, informative video. In today's lesson, we'll discuss how to initially read people's DiSC style by observing their behavior. I've always encouraged learners to maintain a couple important pieces of baseline knowledge, and these pieces are both critical to people reading. Now, this is especially for my first-time bloggers. If you've been with me through several lessons, you've seen this in prior sessions, and you can skip 3 slides ahead to Bob and Mel. First are the cornerstone principles that we've discussed before. All DiSC styles are equally valuable. Everyone is a blend of all DiSC styles, and your unique style is also influenced by other factors such as your life experiences, your education, and your maturity. Second is the basic DiSC styles model, which is critical to people reading. A person's DiSC style is decided by the intersection of those two dimensions of observable behaviors, and we're talking about body language, tone of voice, expression, and word choice. Now, the vertical dimension is known as PACE. That's your outward activity level, and we describe that as either fast-paced and outspoken or cautious and reflective. The horizontal dimension is known as your agreeableness quotient. And what I mean by this, those who are less agreeable place a lower priority or concern on cooperation and social harmony. We refer to them as questioning and skeptical on the left end of the dimension. And the general term for these might be result focused. Those who are more agreeable place a higher priority on cooperation and social harmony, and we refer to them as accepting and warm on the right end of that dimension. And a general term for them might be people focused. Here's the key point about this slide. It's the interaction between these two continua of pace and agreeableness, which forms the 4 quadrants or basic styles of the DiSC, and by which you identify a person's DiSC style. So let's break down this pace and agreeableness as it relates to identifying a person's style or people reading. We'll start with pace. We see that D and I share a faster, outspoken pace. We also see that C and S share a cautious or reflective pace. So if I use the S as the example style here, we see that S and C share some of the same language, if you will, by nature of their shared pace. In other words, if they have a similar pace, they're more likely to be able to understand one another sooner and easier than if they have a dissimilar pace. So putting that another way, they each know a little bit about the language of the other with whom they're interacting. Same would be true between the D and the I. Now let's look at agreeableness. We see that D and C share a questioning and skeptical agreeableness. They're considered result focused. We also see that I and the S share accepting and warm agreeableness. And again, we consider them people focused. In other words, these pairs each know a little bit about the language of the other. You can see how I make the same inference about language that I made in the PACE grid by looking at similarity in agreeableness. Now, this information will help when we begin to discuss people reading. Actually, it's the first level of people reading. It's always about pace and agreeableness. I like to circle back to this key central concept as the starting point to people reading one's DiSC style. Let's visit Bob and Mel meeting on a project at work. Bob thinks, is Mel's pace faster and more outspoken or more cautious and reflective? Mel thinks, is Bob's agreeableness questioning and skeptical, kind of result focused, or accepting and warm and more people focused? I'm going to stop here and add in one more learning point based upon this specific scenario. Perhaps, as with our individuals shown, Bob and Mel, you are able to determine either pace or agreeableness, just one or the other. You'll at least know something about the other style as you proceed. So let's go back to our breakdown in the model of pace and agreeableness. Remember, we discussed each style shares pace or agreeableness with one other style. Specifically, if Bob discovers that Mel has a faster, outspoken pace, he can at least begin to determine that Mel's probably either what? Either a D or an I. because pace is shared between the D and the I, the faster pace. Similarly, if Mel discovers that Bob demonstrates a questioning and skeptical agreeableness, Mel can at least begin to determine that Bob is probably either a D or a C. From there, each will want to observe more behaviors to help determine the other missing aspect of pace or agreeableness model to help accurately identify a specific DiSC style. Let's look at an overview of the DiSC model as a high-level reminder of the 4 styles. We already know the 2 continua, which tell us the basic DiSC styles. Now let's see more descriptors which help us as we continue our people reading lesson. So we see dominant is featured here. Dominant priorities include getting immediate results, taking action, challenging self and others. If they had a motto, it would be do it now. Other descriptors, direct, firm, strong-willed, forceful, results-oriented. Their limitations, the D can appear to have a lack of concern for others, maybe appear impatient, and even insensitivity. Let's move on to influence. The influence priorities include expressing enthusiasm, taking action, encouraging collaboration. And if they had a motto, it'd be let's have fun. Other descriptors of the I or influence style include outgoing, enthusiastic, optimistic, high-spirited, and lively. Limitations, the I can appear to show impulsiveness, maybe a lack of follow-through, even disorganization. Next, we move to steady. Their priorities include giving support, maintaining stability, enjoying collaboration. If they had a motto, it would be let's do it together. Other descriptors, even tempered, accommodating, patient, humble, and tactful. If S has any limitations, they can become overly accommodating, have a tendency to kind of avoid change, and even seem indecisive. And finally, conscientious. Their priorities include ensuring accuracy, maintaining stability, challenging assumptions, and if they had a motto, it'd be do it right. Other descriptors, analytical, reserved, precise, private, systematic. If there's any limitations to a C, they can become or be perceived as overly critical, may have a tendency to overanalyze, and can even isolate themselves. Now, suppose we're not able to identify one's pace and agreeableness. Do people display other behaviors, including body language, tone, expression, and word choice, that can still help us? Yes. Let's review the short email. Subject is Labor Day schedule. 2, managers and soups. We're closed. Communicate same to employees, customers, and vendors. Resume normal schedule Tuesday. So when you see an email written in extremely brief tone or language, right to the point, and not overly detailed, we see a style that is purposeful, abbreviated, and more notifying than friendly, however, not unfriendly. Based on your knowledge of the DiSC model, you might begin to surmise you're dealing with a D or a do-it-now approach. Let's look again. Follow along as I read a different email composed by another style. Subject, Labor Day schedule. Woohoo! Hi, guys. We're closed Labor Day, and I'm sure some of you are sad about this paid day off. However, you should be planning for a busy holiday this weekend filled with family, friends, and fun. I've spoken with many of you, and it sounds like our town will be busy with celebrations. Special thanks to the Chew crew who labored to set up a potluck on Friday and help kick off this long, well-deserved weekend. Looking forward to those home-baked cookies. Don't forget to wish your employees, customers, and vendors happy Labor Day as well. And you know the routine. I'll see your bright, smiling, sunburned faces back in the office on Tuesday. Sincerely, your Labor Day concierge, Pat. Now, as we review this email, we see it's filled with a happy tone, very social, font changes, emoticons, exclamation marks, and is filled with how much fun a particular meeting's going to be. Knowing nothing else, you're likely dealing with more of an I with a let's have fun approach. Now, in a previous video, I've mentioned the way types, different DiSC types use an elevator. Instead of me telling which type is approaching the elevator and then describing them, let's reverse engineer and see if we can get a pretty good guess at what type is being described by their behaviors. So several people are approaching a waiting elevator. A few people have already entered and pushed their respective floor buttons. Now all boarded, a late arriver hurriedly steps on and says, "All aboard," as the door just begins to close. That same person hears someone outside exclaim, "Wait, room for one more?" Well, enthusiastically, the late arriver impulsively jumps into action, blocks open the door, eagerly wanting to help a fellow rider, turns to the crowded elevator and says, "We have room for one more, right?" To which no one responds. That person peers out of the paused elevator doors, makes eye contact, and says, "You just made it. Come on in." Now, a couple things point me in a certain direction with this scenario. The late arriver has a faster pace, which might help us. Their comment of "all aboard" is an indication of outgoing behavior and inclusion. Their enthusiasm and impulsiveness and people concern really help me narrow this to the I quadrant. I would say my best guess is to start with would be an influence. Like any people reading, however, more validation is always recommended. Here's a favorite activity of mine when discussing DiSC styles around the topic, and I call it "Let's grab lunch," or "Where should we go for lunch?" This coworker might call ahead to confirm the restaurant is open, check the menu online ahead of time to review the selections and to estimate how much they can and will spend, and even check the Yelp reviews to see others' opinions of the restaurant. My guess is you're dealing with a C or a conscientious style, and again, always knowing nothing else, just on behaviors. This next coworker might describe their morning, then explain what food cravings they have, then suggest you take their new car, which they'd love to show you, and then swing by another coworker's desk on the way out to see if they'd like to join you. Again, my guess, that sounds like an I or an influence style. Now, this next coworker might suggest you just jump in the car and decide on the way. You guess it, it's probably a D or a dominant style, a "do it now" kind of motto. And our last coworker might sound like this: "Hello, Sarah. How are you today? I was considering where we could go to lunch. Do you have a minute? I've got a couple suggestions to run by you." Well, you, by elimination, if nothing else, you know that's an S or a steady style. So hopefully these somewhat humorous examples demonstrate different approaches which can help you begin to people read and identify individual styles. So I hope this has increased your awareness and knowledge and familiarity of the DiSC, whether your needs include onboarding, employee engagement, culture change, conflict management, team building, or just simply communication. DiSC is a research-based, proven leading training solution. It's impacted more than 8 million learners in over 130,000 organizations and through 14 languages in over 70 countries. DiSC provides a quick, intuitive way to understand yourself and others, and it delivers immediate and lasting impact on the performance of people and the culture of organizations. And as always, my mantra: the key to effectiveness through DiSC is understanding your and other styles, then using that knowledge for improved interactions. Here's our contact info. And before you go, I want to extend you a resource and a request. I'd be happy to send you a sample PDF of any of the DiSC profiles you see on our website, or if you'd just like to discuss a complimentary live webinar introducing DiSC or one of the profiles to your team or organization, shoot me an email at info@traininglocation.com. Be sure and check out our learning blog at the website. And before you close your screen, we always appreciate your like or your share or your download. And of course, for continued learning, please subscribe and click the notification bell so you don't miss out on any new content. Thanks for joining us, and goodbye till next time.